tells you when you first go in.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our Hangouts on Air sessions presented specifically for you as our community school. My name is Danita Morgan.
And I'm Caitlin Gregg, and today we're going to be going over some Google Apps for Education safety highlights. It's important to remember throughout domain administration, especially when you're working on the Google platform, that you should just be cognizant of the different security features that you can have in place to make sure that your student and your staff information and data is as safe as possible. If you want to follow along with us on this slide deck, if you notice, our short URL is on the front, so you can go to bit.ly/GAFE session 3, and you can access the PowerPoint there. All right.
Let's get started.
So the first thing that we'd like to touch on is protecting student data and information. You can hear people, especially in the public school system, talking about FERPA a lot. FERPA stands for the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. FERPA basically protects the privacy of student education records and gives parents the right to review student records. Under FERPA, schools can disclose directory information like where a student lives, etc., but parents may request that the school not disclose this information. And if you read below, we have we're getting into more of the finer details of FERPA, but if you want, we provide you with a link to a .gov site that really goes in depth with this. And as part of our kind of helping you along the way, New Visions has created a sample non-disclosure agreement, which we've also given you a link to. So if you click on that link, it'll prompt you to a view-only document, which you can go to File, make a copy of, and then you have a copy of this for yourself on your own Google Drive. And we give you this school name in brackets so that you can change it for yourself, but it's basically a printable version of this FERPA document that you can send out and have your staff sign this. So you can have either an e-signature or you can have a print signature, and then you can have them print their name and the date, and you can keep this on file. This is something that's also touched on in our domain audits that we went over last week, and we actually provide you with a link to a form that can also serve the same purpose. So you can make a copy of that form, and again, that's in your domain audit, and it takes you to this document that you can have teachers read, and then teachers can respond to the form stating that they've read this document, and it serves the same purpose. And again, this is not something that you need to have done every year, but we suggest it's something that you keep on file, one per staff member, and it's something that you can eventually incorporate into your onboarding process whenever you're hiring new staff members. So that is FERPA.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to go on to the other laws that have been created to protect your students. So one is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And what that does is it protects your students from having their information be used by Google to send them advertisement from third-party organizations. So as you know, Google oftentimes collects our information to try to make its platform more personalized to us for use. So if you have students who are under the age of 13, by law, what this states is that they cannot select what these young students are interested in to send out advertisements and promotions to those students. Luckily, when you're using Google Apps for Education, by default, the advertising is already turned off. But at the same time, using this platform is a better way for you to protect your students because you can set the permissions for yourself. Another act that is in place is the Child Internet Protection Act. And what this states is that your students will not be able to access like obscene and pornographic information. So this is kind of in place to make sure that students don't have the ability to access that. And as you know, the Department of Education has already set up many measures to prevent you from doing this. Switching over to the Google Apps for Education platform allows you to have even more control in protecting your students in doing this. And something that we have put together is a New Vision sample student letter. So this is a letter that is for your students. And typically it's mandated that if you're working on this platform with students under the age of 13, that you have to send this out. However, we recommend that you send this out for all of your students because not only does it serve as a way to make sure you have parental consent to use this platform with your students, but we believe that it also provides a way for you to present your acceptable use policies with your parents and your students. So this is a place where you can actually put in order what you expect from your students while they're using technology in your school. So if it's required for students that are under 13-year-old, but we recommend that you use this for all of your students. And again, as Caitlin mentioned, this is all located in your domain audit under the security section. So if you filter out for security, you can have direct access to all of this information. However, we wanted to make sure that we highlight this for you because we understand just how important it is, and we want to make sure that you protect yourself. So in protecting yourself, something else that we have done is we have purchased CloudLock for all of the schools that we work with here at New Visions. So CloudLock is a third-party application that goes in and it makes sure that all of the information that you are using with your students, especially if it has student data, does not accidentally get shared out to the public. So we have, with this CloudLock installed, what it will do is it will track and see if you have any spreadsheets that have your students' OSIS numbers on them. And if you try to share that outside of your school domain, it will retract that and pull it back. So something that we want to do and make sure of is before you start using our data tools, we want you to complete this form. Now that you have your domain set up and ready to go, we would like for you to complete this form, because once you complete that form, someone from CloudLock will directly contact you to set this up. Again, we want to make this as easy as possible for you, but we also want to make sure that you understand how imperative it is that you protect yourself, protect your school, and protect your students. If you do not hear from CloudLock within a couple of days, like 48 hours, what we recommend that you do is you can contact Tom McGuire directly. He has given us his contact information so that you can reach out to him and make sure that you are all set. And this is the icon that you will see once you have CloudLock set up on your Google Drive. If you do not have that set up, it's very imperative that you make sure that this is set up prior to using our data tools on your domain.
Yeah, so right now we're going to just walk you very quickly through what CloudLock looks like when you're actually in your own domain. So there's two different ways that we can get to CloudLock, just like we can get to anything that we're using administratively within Google. So I can go to my gmail.com, or I can go in through my admin console, and we'll show you how to get to it both ways. So if I'm in my Gmail and I click on this little 9-box icon at the top right, and I click on more, just like I would access my admin console this way, I also see, like Danita just showed us in that screenshot earlier, the icons for CloudLock. So we have two icons, and most of you may see two. CloudLock Apps Firewall Fabric, what this first one says, this is an older version of the tool, and we're not going to use that. We're going to always want to click on CloudLock for Google Apps. So clicking on that should take me into CloudLock. We can also access CloudLock directly from our admin console. CloudLock is considered a Google app, so we would go under apps, and it is considered a marketplace app because it is not an app that's created by Google. So if we click, on marketplace apps, again, we see these two different CloudLock icons, and we are going to click on CloudLock for Google Apps. When you access through the admin console, all you need to do is click on this link underneath where it shows us that it says CloudLock and On for Everyone. And On for Everyone is something that we'll go over in a little bit, but it's very important that you make sure CloudLock is on for all of your organizational units, or OUs, like we went over last week. So I'm now in CloudLock, and it's asking me to sign in, and you should be able to sign in with Google. So we click Go, and it should ask us what account we want to use. We're going to use our admin account, and we're going to get into CloudLock. So right now, when you get into CloudLock, this is what you should see. You should see a pretty nice visual dashboard that allows you to see all of your incidents and the severity of those incidents. Incidents being issues with something that go against a preset policy that you have on your CloudLock. So we'll go over that in a second. So we see the policies with most incidents, incidents by status, and the top applications we're using. So what you're all going to really be concerned with is going to this section that says policies on our left-hand side. So we click on policies. It will show us all of the policies that we have enacted for our domain. CloudLock is really great in that they have policies for all different types of industries. So they have business policies, they have finance policies, and they have education policies. So if you guys are just starting out with CloudLock, what you'd want to do is go to add a policy, and you can either add a predefined policy or build your own. Going to predefined policy allows us to select a location and then an industry. So we see education, finance, general, government, healthcare. We're going to go to education, and as you can see, there's a whole bunch of great policies here that are already predefined for us based on us being an education user in the United States. So one of my favorite policies is this extreme inappropriate language policy. It basically it allows us to, once we select our policy, to choose a severity level and then configure our policy. So we already have this policy on our domain actually, so we'll just go ahead and take a look at it. So this extreme inappropriate language is set to active and it's set to alerts. So if we look at this, it's telling us that hold on one second, all the way at the right-hand side, these are our response actions. So it's telling us our response action for someone going against this extreme inappropriate language policy is to revoke Google Drive sharing. And that's something that you can edit, and you can say, send an admin notification, an incident status update, copy the file. So it's really great how you can configure these things. So let's say a student is trying to send inappropriate language to someone, trying to send inappropriate language to, let's say, another student, and they think that they're not going to get caught because they're putting in the word in a way that it's not supposed to be spelled. CloudLock has basically found every single way to spell an inappropriate word and has added it to this policy. So it's really great in that sense. And you can just have a whole bunch of different action items done with this. So if a student's sending an inappropriate email, it can revoke their Google Drive sharing. It can also route this email to your admin user. It can also send the student an email letting them know that you knew that they were trying to send inappropriate language, and this is how you were going to respond accordingly. So New Vision's also partners with CloudLock for these two really, really important policies. These are two policies that New Vision has created that CloudLock has in the past and will in the future put onto any New Vision's associated school domains. So these are policies related to FERPA internal exposure and FERPA external exposure. FERPA is that first Family Education Rights and Privacy Act that we were discussing earlier. So this internal exposure at a very high level is basically saying it's a policy that's acting internally within the domain. So it will say if any teacher or administrator accidentally shares a Google Drive document or a spreadsheet, anything of that nature, with a student that contains an OSIS number, it will revoke the Google Drive sharing. And that's really important. And I know that there may be some schools who are okay with sharing student OSIS numbers out, but we believe as an organization that this is something that we kind of want to shy away from. So this is something where it's not going to delete the article, or it's not going to delete the spreadsheet. All it's going to do is say, this is shared with a student and it shouldn't be, let's unshare it. And I'm going to send the user being the owner of the document or Drive content, an email telling them what we did. This FERPA public or external exposure is also majorly, majorly important, probably more so than the internal exposure. And notice how these two levels are different. So the internal exposure is just a warning, but the public or external exposure is critical. So our external exposure policy is basically saying if anything is shared outside of your domain, or outside of New Vision's, as we can configure this to accept various domains as being a part of our main domain almost. So you can have your school domain, and then you can decide on adding other domains so that they're not affected by this policy. So New Vision's domain, newvisions.org, is something that we set up so that is this policy ignores anything shared with us. So basically it says if anything is shared outside of your domain containing OSIS numbers, it's going to automatically revoke the Google Drive sharing, send the user notification that this happened, and also send the admin notification. The admin being your CloudLock administrator. Normally your CloudLock and your domain administrators are the same person, but sometimes it can be different. We have schools where the principal is the CloudLock administrator. Either way, it's doing this so that we can see what's going on so that we can take some sort of appropriate action. And that is basically CloudLock in a nutshell. You can see that all these different policies are active. These few policies are inactive. And if you ever want to, you can actually go to the top and you can build your own policy, which is really great. You can choose your severity level, choose your policy type. And then it allows you to create really great response actions. And CloudLock is just really cool because you have this dashboard that's letting you know what's going on. It's showing you different incidents and who the owners are with the most incidents. You can kind of see patterns going on within the school. So these are things that you can digest and react upon or not react upon, depending on what you decide to do at the school. So that is CloudLock. And like I said, if you all have CloudLock currently on your domains, you're going to want to make sure and go in and make sure these FERPA internal exposure and FERPA external exposure policies are set to active. One note is that in order for this FERPA internal exposure policy to be set to active, in your admin console, in your organizational units, your student organizational unit must be explicitly set to be active students. The way that this policy works is that it looks for anything shared with the organizational unit title of active students. So if your OU for students is just the word students, or it's my school students, etc., it will not work. The internal exposure policy will not work. So you will need to make sure that this is set to active students. And that is something that we explicitly, again, state in that domain audit. So that's all I've got to say on CloudLock. And now if we switch back really quickly to our slide deck, what we're going to see is the next thing we're going to cover is Google driving safely. So we're going to want to see what's really great about those organizational units, like I went on and on about last week during our last Hangout, is that they're really great for helping you manage restricting different apps and parts of the admin console to specific groups of users. So if we look at this, this is just showing us what different settings can look like for our apps. But if we actually go back to our admin console, we can show you what this means. So we're within our admin console now, and I've decided that I don't want my students to have access to contacts. I don't think that they need to email anyone, and I will release this to them mid-year once we go over the importance of appropriate etiquette when using our email. So if I go into my Google Apps, I'm seeing all the apps associated with my domain that are created by Google. And this is where you will find Drive and Gmail and Google Classroom and Calendar. These are all considered apps that Google's created. So right now I can see that Contacts is on for selected orgs. So if I click in here, it shows me contacts are on for some organizations. I want to see what that means. So I'm going to click on View the Status for each org. So I can see that the master setting on my domain is UPD, is on. So that means my master setting is on, but I've overridden this for some of my OUs. So I have a lot of OUs in this domain. So I can see that active students, this is currently on for, but for alumni, we've shut it off. So if you ever want to go in and set a specific app to be on for some organizational units and off for some, this is what you would need to do. So our master setting will stay on. You would select whatever OU you want this turned off for. So let's go to former staff. We're going to shut this off for former staff. You click on former staff and you see that it's on. You're going to then want to click on the word override and click on the slide bar to turn it off. Then you notice it says these changes may take up to 24 hours to propagate to all users. You're going to want to click apply. You always, always, always want to click apply or save whenever you see that button, because if you don't, your changes will not take effect. So it's telling us we're turning off this contacts app for former staff. Do we understand what this means? X, Y, and Z. We're going to click on turn off. And now we can see that in addition to alumni having that status of overridden, former staff do as well. So we have active students are on, we have alumni are overridden, we have former staff are overridden, our demo org is on. So let's go back to all of our apps, and now we can see that if we notice status is on for everyone, on for everyone, on for select orgs, you can also do what we just went over without clicking into each app itself. You can actually go ahead, and if you want to click on these three little dots for each app, it allows you to very quickly click on for everyone, on for some, or off. So if you ever want to, let's say, groups for business, I want to turn this off. So I'm going to click on those three dots, click on off, and it's giving us that same pop-up. Do we understand we're turning it off for everyone? So I'm not going to do that. But let's say maybe I want to turn it off for alumni. So I'm going to click on for some organizations, and it's going to take us to that same pop-up again. So we see our master setting is on, and everyone has that inherited master setting because it's on for everyone. But I'm going to shut this off for former staff. So I click on former staff, click override, click off, and then click apply. And once I turn this off, we're going to notice that for groups for business, this on for everyone is going to turn into on for some organizations. So if we go out of this, then we'll see that groups for business now says on for select orgs. And this is also something that you can do not just for your Google apps, but for your additional Google services. And this is, again, something that we go over in our domain audits. We suggest turning off Google AdSense and AdWords for all organizational units. And you should also be turning off Google Payments for all organizational units. There's no reason anyone should be shopping online on their school domain. That's something that they can do when they're at home with their personal email. And then again, Google Plus is something that we have on for everyone on this domain. But if you notice in the audit, we suggest that Google Plus, since it's more or less a kind of it's Google's answer to social media platforms, that it's turned off for your student organizational units. And again, you have YouTube, which we suggest is left on because we think that there's some really great use in using YouTube educationally. So same thing for these apps. You could do the same thing for your marketplace apps. Marketplace apps are those third-party applications that are not Google that you may download to your domain. So these are things that we can turn on and off if we choose. And that is how you can use apps to your benefit to make sure that you're configuring correctly.
And you can also go in and check out your settings under your different applications. So when you're using Google Drive, if you go into the app itself, you can share different settings. So you can look at the sharing settings that you have set, and you can make it so that maybe you want your students to not be able to share their files outside of your domain. So you can turn that on, and you can actually go in on a deeper level and make different permissions within your Google apps. So that's something that's also highlighted within your domain audit tool, but this is how you actually go in and get those things done. If you just click directly into the app, you can look at the settings that you have in place and change those settings for specific users. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go right into Google Drive settings. So that's exactly where we're headed now. And aside from looking at it on an admin perspective, where you're looking on a top level, because remember, not all of your users have access to being able to change those permissions in those settings. Only your domain admin has access to that. All of your users have access to using Google Drive on the personal level, and they're able to share and collaborate with other users in your domain, as well as outside of your domain, depending on how you have that set up. So when you're sharing something, you want to make sure that you're cognizant of and aware of exactly what setting you're putting in place. So what we want to do is just quickly, these are 2 screenshots that shows you how that is done. And what we want to do is quickly show you how you can set that up. So if I go into my Google Drive, which is basically the way that Google allows you to create a Google document or a Google spreadsheet. So if I go here, I have the option to create a doc, a sheet. This is Google Slides, which is kind of like a PowerPoint if you're familiar with that. So I'm going to go into Google Docs now, and I'm going to start working on my curriculum. So I'm working on my 9th grade global unit plan, right, for Unit 1. So as a teacher, this is something that I want to create, and I want to be able to work on this with other teachers in my school. I want other teachers on my 9th grade team to be able to work on this as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select share. So I have options. One, I can share it directly with another user. So I'm going to type in Caitlin, and I'm going to share this document with her. And then I have options of what Caitlin is allowed to do. I can make it so that when Caitlin comes into this document, she can also edit this document, or I can have her just be able to add comments or just be able to view the document. I just want her to look at it. I don't want her to really change any of the settings. So if I select send, it's prompting me to make sure that I know that I'm sharing this outside of my domain, and I'm saying, yes, that's okay. I trust Caitlin, so I can share this with her. And what's really amazing is that as I start typing, now we are going to see what happens once Caitlin is in. So as you can see, you already see this little pink cursor, and if you hover over it, you see that it's Caitlin's name. I also see that Caitlin's icon is listed here, letting me know that she is also in this document. So what's amazing is that Caitlin can also highlight, Caitlin can type, because I've allowed her to edit. So right now, as you can see, when Caitlin types, it'll pop up here as well. So Caitlin decided to say, she highlighted her name, and then she added a comment which says, that's me. So if Caitlin were looking at a document that I had created and she wanted to let me know something that I needed to change, she could do that. And I can go right here and I can have a full conversation with her on the side. So great, nice to see you. And say I spelled Caitlin's name wrong, she can go in and tell me how to spell her name correctly on the side and let me know exactly what needs to be done. So this is when you're looking at it in the editing mode, and this allows Caitlin and I to interact with this document in real time. And that can be done with any document that you are working on. She can also pin and send, so when she puts a plus sign, and then she puts an email address that says you too. Aside from me seeing this in the document, say I'm at home and I'm not looking at the document at that time while she's working in it, she can send me an email directly from the doc and point me to exactly what she wants me to see. So by pushing that plus sign, what Caitlin does is she sends me an email letting me know that this has been done. So if I go to my email, I can actually see where Caitlin has sent me something to know that there's something that has been done. We have a lot going on in our email, so it didn't pop up at the very top.
It's also worthwhile to note that in addition to just doing the plus admin, you can also click in here, and just like you do on Facebook or on Twitter, you can add someone. So if Danita wants to get back to me, it should let her do it. There we go. Usually, depending on the way the domain is set up, you can either start to type in a person's name or most definitely their email. So you can start to type my email and the @ symbol, click on and see how it turns into a plus, so it's doing that same thing. So it serves the same purpose.
And once Caitlin and I have gone through this and we know that everything is as it should be, I can click resolve, and that lets me know that we have already completed that. So now Caitlin's asked me what this unit should be about, and I could literally respond to her directly under and have that. We can also have title, we can have, time span or time length, right? And we can put in lesson plans. And now this can be shared with other members in my grade team. This can also be shared with my administration, so administration has the direct opportunity to look at this. So also what you can do when you're doing this is you can turn it into suggestion mode. So if I turn it into suggesting mode, this will allow her to just directly make suggestions on the document, but it will not make those suggestions active until I have seen it and I accept that. So if I were to say that I want to delete this, I just hover over it and I backspace, and it says this should be deleted. Now then your user, if they select the checkbox, then it will do that for them. If they select the X, it will reject that suggestion. And again, you can always reply and have that conversation. So I'm going to accept that suggestion and take that away. And say I'm looking and we have our whole unit plan in place, and then by accident, one of us goes in and we delete part of the unit plan. What you can do is you can actually go right into your file. You can go into see revision history, And then if I go into, now I can see who's typed what, and green stands for Joe, and then the purple would stand for Caitlin, so I can see what Caitlin has done. And then if I go back to restore this revision, it will revert back to exactly where it left off at that moment. So it restored the revision to that location. So that's another great feature. But again, if you're sharing this, now what's really amazing is that using this platform, you can easily share and collaborate with other people within your domain on documents. But at the same time, you might want to be careful so that you don't share this with everyone, right? And so here we can see that I'm the owner. This is telling me exactly what I have allowed Caitlin to be able to do, and I can also invite other people to do that. If I go here to change, I can make it so that this link is shared to anyone with the link or just people who have UPD. Now, if you're sending out like a Google form to collect data or contact information from your parents, you want to make sure that it's something that can be shared outside of your domain. But if it's something that's only being housed within your domain, you want to make sure you have those settings. And also when you're using New Visions, when you're using our New Visions data tools, you want to make sure that this is made so that it's only accessible within your domain and within the New Visions domain. And again, that's another advantage of having CloudLock, because at any given moment, what Caitlin was referring to earlier is that teachers, since it's so easy to share, teachers can accidentally share this, and it may, I'm sure it's not done maliciously, but if teachers accidentally share this with the wrong organization or with a student name, if a student and a staff member has a similar name, what it will do is it will revert that sharing so that the student does not have access to all of your students' information, and that you're still in compliance with the different FERPA laws that are in place.
Yeah, and just piggybacking on what Danita was saying, we do have all these different options for sharing. We very strongly advise against putting something onto this one, on public on the web. That means that anyone who is searching for something with the same title as this document could potentially access it. We suggest that the kind of highest level of sharing that you all go with is for on anyone with the link, meaning that a person can access this who's not in our domain, but they have to have been given this link in some way, which is what we do for you all for these Hangouts. We set our slide decks to on for anyone with the link, and if we notice that down here at the access level, we can change it to view, comment, or edit, and we just leave it on view for you all. So even though you're all not in our domain and we're all on tens or hundreds maybe of different domains, we can all see and access this same slide deck that we're working on.
Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into how you can create a Google spreadsheet. So a lot of the New Visions data tools that you're using comes from your Google Sheets. And it's important to know some of the features that you can use when using spreadsheets that will help you be able to navigate and to, go through the New Visions data tools while you're using your spreadsheet. So here you have an add-ons drop-down menu, and this is where you can create many add-ons to help you have more use of using your Google Spreadsheets. When you're using this with your students, you will have another button tab over here that will say New Visions Data Tools. And right now it's not on your school domain, and that's because you do not yet have CloudLock set up. But as soon as you have that set up, you will have access to it, and you'll be able to share it with the users that you feel should have access to this.
Yeah, and we'll go more into those Google add-ons in our 2 last Google Hangouts. But I think it may be worthwhile to touch on folder sharing within our drive. So just as we have that document sharing, it's the same sharing structure for documents, for spreadsheets, but also for our folders within our drive. So as we can see, we have a lot of different folders here. And if we notice, some of these folders just look like regular file folders, and some have these little person icons. Anything with a little icon means that that folder is shared with someone other than the owner. So I am in this generic admin account. In this global PD folder, that's just mine. But this one is something that is shared with someone else. And if we go into this and we see all these different icons, we can see that this is shared with the PSO admin. So if we go back, let's say we're in our global PD folder. We're in here, we're looking at it. And let's say I decided that I want to share this with myself. I'm working on this admin account, but I want to be able to work with it on my personal account, or my work email. So I'm going to click on this little person icon with the plus sign, and it's going to show me that I'm sharing this. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to be the same structure. You can put in people's names, you can click advanced so that you can change the different access levels of this. But what we suggest is you just invite people explicitly. What's great is you can notify people and add a message. So let's say I want to, let me invite myself. I want to invite myself, and I'm going to leave myself a message that says, remember to take care of this today. So that means that I'm sending this message to me, or I could be sending it to anyone. I could be sending it to Danita or one of you. And I'm clicking send, and that means that, again, it's giving me that message to let me know that I'm not within this domain. Do I still want to share? Yes. What's great about this is that it will now send an email to the person saying, hey, this admin account shared this folder with you, and I have edit access, and it's also going to show me, what's great is that little message of whatever the person put in to tell me about what they're sharing with me. So that's really great because it's just another level of communication that you can have with the other users on your domain.
And you also want to be mindful of when someone shares a file with you. So say Caitlin were to share this folder with me or share a document with me, it goes into shared with me. So this is all of the different items that have been shared with me and documents that have been shared with me. Now, this is not located within my drive. And what that means is in shared with me, you cannot organize what's in your shared with me structure. So I can only sort it by the shared date. That's my limitations. Whereas in my Google Drive, I can actually share it into folders to keep myself more organized and to be able to find the file easily when I look for it in the future. So whenever you have something that has been shared with you, what we recommend is that you go over and you hover over it. So I want to make sure I can access this easily. And if you double click this or right click it, or if you're using a Mac, if you're double click, you'll be able to see that you can add this to your drive. Once I add it to my drive, now I can organize it and place it into a different folder. So now it's somewhere that I can easily access in the future. So if I pick a folder and I select move here, it will move that document to wherever it is that I'm trying to share it. So that's a feature that we want to make sure that you always do.
Yes, definitely. And just be wary of whether or not you move these folders around. The thing about Google Drive is that the more things you're shared on and the more collaboration you do, the easier it is to kind of lose documents or to lose folders. So it's very important that you kind of have a pretty good structure in place within your own drive so that you have all of your drive contents organized in a way that you can find it easily.
You also want to make sure that when you share a file from your shared with me, if it's something that you do not want shared with multiple users, be mindful of that when you move it to a specific folder. Because if I take one of these files and I place it inside of a folder that is shared with other users on my organization, those users will now have access to that document. And luckily, Google does prompt you and it lets you know that you're moving it to a shared file. But you just want to make sure that when you move something into a folder that's accessible by multiple users, that you are ready to have that file or that document be shared with those users as well. So that's something that you also want to be cognizant of. Good. And so another thing that you can do is you can add a star and you could change your color. So back to the point of having your files organized, another way that you can filter is by filtering for your starred folders and your starred documents, and that will, if there's something that's really important, you can star it, and then if you want, you can go to your starred structure, and then all of your accounts that have been starred or all of your documents that have been starred will come up right here. So if you have something that's really important, it's almost like pinning it, you can get back to it very easily. You also have the ability to go to your recent So something that you have used most recently, you have the ability to go see that as well. And then also, if you want to put something in your trash, just be mindful that when you throw something away, you can go to your trash folder and you can bring it back, but you only can bring it back for a certain amount of time. So you don't have access to that. I think it's about 30 days that it stays in your drive. And I think you could set that setting as well, but just be mindful of that. And if something is thrown away, you can go back and try to retrieve that if it's within that time frame. So, all right. So I think that covers everything under your direct settings for using Google Drive, specifically using Google Documents. And again, you see how easy it is for you to share and collaborate, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're sharing and collaborating with the right people. So that just brings us back to making sure that we're always using this platform as safely as possible to minimize the risk of having student data exposure.
Yes, and on that note, please all make sure that if you have a Google domain but do not have CloudLock yet installed on it, please, please, please go back to that slide deck that we provided you with and click on that link and fill out that survey so that we can make sure that you all get CloudLock up and running on your domain.
And this is why we have this survey in place for all of you. And this is also why we are not granting you access to our data tools on your school domain until you complete this form and go through the due process with CloudLock. Again, we really want to make sure that you're protecting yourselves and protecting your students. So what we have coming up, we put on this slide deck as well, a direct link to our future Hangout on Air events. And the next event that's coming up is on February 17th, where we'll talk about, how to best launch this with your students and the different steps that you can take, as well as different tools that you can use to support the creation and the management of student accounts and student devices. Also, we wanted to just give you the direct access to this link, cloudlab.newvisions.org. And what that will do is it'll take you to the add-ons that we are using to help you with launching this with your students. So if you want to go and you want to look and learn in advance, you can do that. And then you can come prepared with your questions to the next Hangout, and we can go over that in person.
Yes. Great. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Have a good week, and we will talk to you in about 2 weeks.
All righty. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.